Emily Green had always lived happily as a girl with her loving parents, believing her life was perfectly ordinary. One day, on her way home from school, she noticed a missing person advertisement flashing on a digital screen at a bus stop shelter. The ad featured a little boy, and this single image would change her life forever, leading her to uncover a dark secret hidden deep within her parents' past, a secret far more sinister than any child her age should ever have to bear. Even before the story unfolds in its shocking entirety, the reader is invited to join the journey, sharing the wonder of where the tale is being watched and feeling the weight of what is about to be revealed. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more great stories like this one. Share this video with your friends and family, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Stay tuned for our next video, and check out others you might have missed. See you next time. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves as Emily, a 9-year-old girl with soft brown hair and fair skin, stood outside her elementary school in Washington. It was Friday afternoon, and the excitement of the impending weekend and school holidays buzzed among the other students. Yet Emily stood quietly, her small backpack clutched tightly to her chest, scanning the street for any sign of her mother, Rachel Green. The school day had been long and challenging, especially because of the math test that had loomed over the third graders all week. And as the minutes ticked by, more and more classmates were picked up by their parents or boarded the familiar yellow school buses. Emily watched them go, a twinge of impatience growing in her chest, for she knew her mother worked hard and sometimes ran late. However, when she was left alone, that waiting felt even longer. Just as Emily was considering asking the school secretary to call home, she spotted a familiar figure rounding the corner. Rachel Green, her mother, walked briskly toward the school, her long coat billowing slightly in the gentle breeze. "Mom!" Emily called out, her face breaking into a wide smile as she ran to meet her. Rachel's tired expression softened instantly when she saw her daughter. Opening her arms wide, Rachel enveloped Emily in a warm embrace and softly apologized. "Hello, sweetheart. I'm sorry I'm a little late. How was your day?" Rachel gently inquired as they pulled apart. Emily's bright eyes betrayed a mix of emotions as she replied, "It was okay. We had our math test today. It was pretty hard, but I think I did all right." Rachel nodded sympathetically, assuring, "I'm sure you did great. Honey, you've been studying so hard for it." Hand in hand, they began to walk away from the school. As they strolled, Emily chattered about the various events of her day. The funny remark Lily had made at lunch, the details of the new art project introduced in class, and, of course, more about that dreaded math test. They arrived at a bus stop just a short distance from the school, a simple structure with a bench and a clear plastic shelter, currently empty except for the two of them. As they sat down to wait, Emily's attention was suddenly drawn to the digital ad display mounted on one side of the shelter. The screen, which had previously been showing an advertisement for a local restaurant, abruptly changed. Emily's eyes widened as she saw a missing poster featuring a young boy, no more than 2 years old, with tousled brown hair and big, sorrowful eyes. "Mom, look," Emily said, pointing excitedly at the screen. "It's a missing kid. Why do little kids go missing? Don't their parents look after them?" Rachel, who had been absently scrolling through her phone, looked up at Emily's question. As her gaze fell on the missing person ad, something changed in her expression, a subtle tightening around her eyes and a slight parting of her lips that Emily noticed immediately. "Mom," Emily prompted when her mother did not respond at first. Rachel blinked, as if coming out of a trance, and replied in a slightly strained voice, "Well, honey, these ads are there in the hope that the public might have seen that person somewhere." Emily frowned, unsatisfied with the answer. "Yes, but why do they just disappear? Don't their parents care? Why don't they search for their child themselves?" Rachel did not answer immediately. Her eyes remained fixed on the ad, which now displayed the name Samuel beneath the boy's photo. The silence stretched on and grew uncomfortable, just as Emily was about to ask again when the distant rumble of an approaching bus broke the tension. Rachel abruptly stood up, taking Emily's hand, and said cheerily, "Look, the bus is here. Let's go home, shall we?" As they boarded the bus, Emily cast one last, lingering glance at the digital display. The image of the little boy with his sad eyes stayed with her, a nagging question that would not easily be forgotten. Inside the bus, the atmosphere was warm and stuffy, a stark contrast to the crisp autumn air outside. Emily and Rachel found seats near the middle of the bus, settling into the worn fabric cushions as the vehicle lurched into motion. Despite the movement, Emily's mind buzzed with questions about the missing child she had just seen. "Mom," she began softly but persistently, "how do people just go missing? I don't understand." Rachel, who had been staring out the window with a distant look, turned to face her daughter. Her expression was a mixture of fatigue and something else, perhaps worry or frustration, though Emily couldn't quite place it. "Emily, please," Rachel said with a strained voice. "I've had a long day at work, and I need some peace right now. Can we talk about something else?" Emily's face fell with a pang of guilt. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know you were so tired." Rachel's expression softened as she reached out to gently stroke Emily's hair. "It's okay, sweetheart. You couldn't have known. Let's just enjoy the ride home." For a few quiet moments, the gentle rocking of the bus and the muffled conversations of other passengers created a soothing background, until a sharp electronic chime abruptly cut through the ambient sounds. Rachel reached in her purse and pulled out her smartphone. Glancing at the screen and then back at Emily, she said, "It's time for your medicine, honey." Even as Emily's nose wrinkled in protest. "Do I have to? My stomach feels empty. Can't I eat something first?" Rachel shook her head firmly. "You know the rules, Emily. You have to take your asthma medicine at this time. No excuses." Rachel then retrieved a small pill bottle and a water bottle from her bag. Emily's shoulders slumped in resignation. Although she wanted to argue, she knew better than to do so. As she reluctantly held out her hand for the pill, Rachel's voice softened. "Remember when you almost suffocated during sleep? It was because you didn't take your asthma pills on time." A flicker of fear passed through Emily's eyes as the memory surfaced. She remembered waking up in the middle of the night, her chest tight and struggling for breath. "But Mom," Emily said hesitantly, "I remember taking my pills that day. Why didn't they work?" Rachel paused for a moment, her hand still extended with the pill, and then said slowly, You didn't take the pill on time that day. You took it too late, so it didn't work as intended." Emily frowned slightly, trying to reconcile this explanation with her hazy memories of that frightening night. Nevertheless, the recollection of fear was enough to push away any lingering doubts. She took the pill from her mother's hand and swallowed it with a gulp of water. "Good girl," Rachel said, giving Emily a small smile. "I know it's not fun, but it's important for your health." The remainder of the bus ride passed in relative silence as Emily watched the familiar streets of her neighborhood pass by outside the window. Her thoughts drifted between the challenging math test, the mysterious missing boy on the poster, and the unpleasant aftertaste left by the pill. Finally, the bus pulled up to their stop, and as they disembarked, they began the short walk to their house. Emily's spirits lifted momentarily at the sight of her father, David Green's car in the driveway. "Dad's home early," she exclaimed, quickening her pace. They reached the front door, and as Rachel fumbled with her keys, the door swung open to reveal David, whose face broke into a wide smile at the sight of them. "They're my two favorite girls," he said, opening his arms wide. Emily rushed forward, throwing herself into her father's embrace. "Dad, you're home early." David chuckled, lifting Emily off her feet in a warm, bear hug. "I sure am, Pumpkin. I thought we could all spend some extra time together, since it's the start of your school holidays." As he set Emily down, he turned to Rachel, giving her a quick kiss. "How was your day, honey?" he asked. Rachel's smile seemed a bit forced as she returned the kiss and replied, "It was fine, just a long day." David nodded understandingly, clapping his hands together as he announced, "Well, I've got an idea to cheer everyone up. How about we all cook dinner together tonight? It's Friday. After all, we can make it a fun family activity." Emily's face lit up at the suggestion. "Oh, can we? That sounds fun," she exclaimed. Before David could respond further, however, Rachel interjected, "Actually, David, I need to discuss something with you first." Turning to Emily with a soft tone, she added, "Sweetheart, Why don't you go watch some TV in the living room while your father and I talk for a bit? Although Emily's excitement deflated slightly, she nodded. Okay, Mom. As she made her way to the living room, she could hear her parents' hushed voices behind her, a conversation that made her feel uneasy. The muffled sounds of their conversation drifted from the bedroom, and as Emily sat on the living room sofa, TV remote in hand, she flipped through channels, not really paying attention to the colorful images flashing across the screen. Instead, her mind was preoccupied with curiosity about what her parents were discussing so intently. Absent-mindedly, her gaze wandered to the coffee table in front of her, where a small pile of mail lay, likely brought in by her father earlier. Among the envelopes and flyers, a corner of a newspaper peeked out, catching Emily's attention. Setting the remote aside, she leaned forward and gently tugged the newspaper free from the pile until it came into full view. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she saw, on the front page, the same image she had seen on the bus stop advertisement. The missing boy, Samuel. His brown eyes stared out at her, a mixture of innocence and sadness that tugged at her heart. And once again she wondered about the circumstances that had led to his disappearance. How could someone so young simply vanish? The thought sent a shiver down her spine as memories of the safety lessons her parents had drilled into her. Never talk to strangers, don't accept rides from anyone you don't know, and always let Mom or Dad know where you are, suddenly took on a new, ominous significance. So engrossed was Emily in her thoughts that she did not hear the bedroom door open until her parents entered the living room, snapping her back to the present. Hastily, she set the newspaper aside as David and Rachel approached with faces composed yet tinged with a lingering tension that Emily could not quite place. They made an effort to appear cheerful, but something was off about their smiles. "Sweetheart," David said in an overly bright tone, "have you decided what you'd like us to cook for dinner?" Emily, still distracted by her earlier thoughts, responded hesitantly, we haven't had spaghetti in a long time. Could we make that?" David's smile became more genuine as he said, "Spaghetti sounds perfect. Great idea. Pumpkin." Moving toward the kitchen, presumably to start gathering ingredients, David paused in the doorway as Rachel turned to address Emily. "See," Rachel said in a low but urgent voice, "I told you." The two exchanged a loaded glance, communicating something that Emily could not understand, as the tension in the room seemed to thicken further. Feeling a growing sense of unease, Emily ventured, "Mom, Dad, what's going on? Is everything okay?" Her parents exchanged another look before David spoke. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Your mother and I just need to discuss something quickly. Adult stuff, you know." Emily frowned, not satisfied with the vague answer. "But what about dinner? And why can't I listen too? I'm not a baby anymore." Rachel stepped forward, placing a hand on Emily's shoulder. "We know you're not a baby, honey, but there are some things that adults need to talk about privately. We won't be long, I promise." With that, her parents retreated back to the bedroom, once again closing the door behind them. Left alone in the living room, Emily felt confused and slightly hurt. She couldn't shake the feeling that something important was happening, something that involved her, yet her parents were not sharing it. She tried to distract herself by watching TV again, but her attention kept drifting to the closed bedroom door and the muffled sounds of her parents' voices, occasionally rising in what sounded like disagreement. Unable to resist her curiosity any longer, Emily crept quietly to the bedroom door and pressed her ear against the wood, straining to make out what was being said. Most of the words were too muffled to understand, though a few phrases came through clearly. "Bad idea. Move to a new state." And her heart began to race at the thought of moving to a new state. Just as she was about to lean in closer, hoping to hear more, the voices inside fell suddenly silent. Before Emily could react, the door swung open, and she stumbled back, nearly losing her balance as she came face to face with her father, David. His expression was a mixture of surprise and disappointment as he said sternly, "Emily, what are you doing? We told you this was an adult matter." Her cheeks burning with embarrassment and a touch of guilt, Emily stammered, I'm sorry, I was just curious. What did you mean about moving to a new state?" Rachel appeared behind David, her face tightening at Emily's question. "Oh, sweetie," she said, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow. You must have misheard us. We were just talking about our holiday plans. It was supposed to be a surprise. Emily looked between her parents, confusion and doubt warring within her. She wanted to believe their explanation, but something about the tension in their faces, the urgency in their voices, did not match up with a simple discussion about a holiday. Before she could voice her doubts or ask any more questions, the shrill ring of a phone cut through the air. Rachel hurried to answer it, leaving Emily and David standing awkwardly in the doorway. As Rachel spoke on the phone, her expression changed from worried to relieved, and after covering the mouthpiece with her hand, she turned to Emily and said, "It's your best friend, Lily. She's asking if you want to come over to play. Would you like that?" The sudden change of subject threw Emily off balance, and after blinking to process the shift from the tense atmosphere of moments ago to this casual invitation, she replied uncertainly, yes. David cleared his throat and added, "Well, we can always cook dinner later. Maybe it would be good for you to spend some time with Lily." Rachel nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, and it'll give your father and me some time to discuss our holiday plans in more detail." Although Emily still felt unsettled by the situation, the prospect of seeing her best friend was tempting, especially after the strange tension of the past few minutes. "Okay," she finally said, "I'd like to go to Lily's." Rachel confirmed the plans. With Lily's mother, Sophia, on the phone, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. Her parents seemed almost too eager to send her away, and the mystery of their private conversation still nagged at her. For now, however, she pushed those thoughts aside, thinking that perhaps spending time with Lily would help clear her head. As she went to get her shoes and jacket, Emily resolved to try and enjoy her time with her friend, convinced that her parents would explain everything soon. The car ride to Lily's house was short, barely 2 minutes, but to Emily, it felt much longer. The silence in the vehicle was thick with unspoken tension, broken only by the soft hum of the engine and the occasional click of the turn signal. Seated in the back, her small hands fidgeting with the seatbelt strap, her mind raced with questions she both wanted and feared to ask. Finally, unable to contain her curiosity any longer, Emily spoke up hesitantly. "Dad, where are we going on holiday?" David's eyes flickered to the rearview mirror, meeting Emily's gaze for a brief moment before returning his attention to the road. "Well, sweetheart," he said in a carefully measured tone, "it's supposed to be a surprise. Your mother and I still need to discuss the details." Emily frowned, not satisfied with the vague answer. "But why is it such a big secret? And why did you need to talk about it right away?" David's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "Sometimes adults need to plan things carefully, Emily. We want to make sure everything is perfect for our trip." As Emily began to protest, David gently interrupted. "Look, we're here," he said while pulling up in front of Lily's house. "Don't worry about this now. Go have fun with your friend." Emily unbuckled her seatbelt, still feeling unsettled as she opened the car door. Turning back to her father, she asked, "You'll pick me up later, right?" David nodded, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Of course, I'll be back in 2 or 3 hours. Be good, okay?" Emily nodded and stepped out of the car. As she walked toward the house, she saw Lily and her mother, Sophia, waiting at the front door. Lily waved excitedly, and Emily felt some of her worries begin to melt away at the sight of her best friend's smile. Lily called out joyfully, rushing down the front steps to meet her, and the two girls hugged and giggled as they nearly lost their balance. Sophia approached more slowly, a warm smile on her face as she said kindly, "Hello, Emily. It's so good to see you. Lily's been so excited for your visit." As they all headed inside, Sophia added, "I'm just finishing up some cleaning in Lily's room. Why don't you girls play in the living room for now?" The girls readily agreed, already deep in conversation about their day at school and the math tests they had taken. They settled on the living room carpet and decided to work on a puzzle together. As Lily dumped out the puzzle pieces from the box, Emily's eyes were drawn once again to a newspaper on a nearby coffee table. With a jolt of recognition, she realized it was the same newspaper she had seen at home, with the missing boy, Samuel, on the front page. Almost without thinking, Emily reached out and picked up the newspaper. "Hey, Lily," she said, holding it up. "We have the same newspaper at home. Isn't that funny?" Lily looked up from the puzzle pieces, focusing on the front page as she took in the image of Samuel. A mischievous grin spread across her face as she giggled. "Oh my gosh, Emily, that boy looks just like you." Emily's brow furrowed in confusion. "What? No, he doesn't. That's a boy, Lily. I'm a girl." But caught up in what she thought was a great joke, Lily continued to tease. "No, really, look at his hair and his eyes. It's like looking at a boy version of you." A surge of anger and hurt rose in Emily's chest. "That's not funny, Lily," she said, her voice rising. "I'm not a boy and I don't look like him." Their argument quickly caught the attention of Sophia, who appeared in the doorway with a concerned look on her face. "What's going on in here, girls?" she asked. Emily, still upset, held up the newspaper and explained, "Lily says I look like this missing boy." Lily added in a trembling voice, "I said I look like a boy, but I don't." Sophia gently stepped forward, taking the newspaper from Emily's hands as she studied the front page. For a long moment, a strange expression crossed Sophia's face, one reminiscent of the look Rachel had given when she saw the ad at the bus stop, a mixture of shock and something else that Emily could not quite identify. Just as Emily was about to ask Sophia why she was staring at the picture so intently, a sharp knock at the front door startled everyone. Sophia seemed to snap out of her trance. She quickly set the newspaper aside and moved toward the door, saying in a slightly strained voice, "I'll get it." Emily and Lily exchanged confused glances as Sophia disappeared into the hallway. Soon, muffled voices and the sound of the door opening reached their ears, and to Emily's surprise, she heard a familiar voice, Rachel's voice, saying, "Oh, so sorry for the short notice," Rachel was saying. The words carried clearly into the living room as something had come up, and they needed to leave right away. Emily stood up, puzzle forgotten, and moved toward the hallway. There, she saw her parents standing in the doorway, looking flustered and slightly out of breath. Rachel's voice was filled with both surprise and urgency as she said, "Rebecca! David, what's going on? I thought you were staying for a few hours." Rachel nodded with jerky, nervous movements and then explained, "Yes, that was the plan, but, well, we've had a change of plans. We're going on that holiday we mentioned, and we need to leave tonight." Emily stepped into the hallway, a mixture of confusion and a touch of excitement stirring inside her. "We're going on holiday now?" she asked, looking between her parents and Sophia. Her parents turned to her, and in their eyes, Emily saw an intensity that sent a shiver of unease down her spine. "Yes, sweetheart," David said in a forcefully cheerful tone. "It's a surprise trip." Sophia looked bewildered, her gaze moving from Emily to her parents and back again. "Wow," she said slowly, "this is very sudden. Where are you going? And why is there so much luggage?" She gestured toward the car behind them, which Emily now noticed was packed full of suitcases and boxes. Rachel stepped forward, placing a hand on Sophia's arm, and whispered, "It's a long story. We'll explain everything later. Right now, we really need to get going." Caught up in the whirlwind of activity, Emily barely had time to say goodbye to Lily before she was ushered back to the car. As she climbed into the back seat, she caught a glimpse of Sophia's face. The look of confusion and concern made her stomach twist with anxiety as they pulled away from the curb. Emily turned in her seat to wave at Lily and Sophia. The image of them standing in the doorway, looking worried and confused, stayed with her as they drove away into the gathering dusk. Inside the car, David and Rachel spoke in low, urgent tones, and although Emily strained to hear their words, they were too quiet to make out clearly. All she knew was that something had changed, that something big was happening, and she was being swept along in its wake. As the familiar streets of their neighborhood gave way to the main road, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a surprise holiday. There was an undercurrent of urgency and fear that she didn't fully understand, but could clearly sense. The car sped through the darkening streets, streetlights flickering to life as dusk settled over the city. Seated in the back, her small frame nearly lost amidst the luggage piled around her, Emily finally leaned forward, her voice small but determined. "Mom, Dad, where are we really going? Her parents exchanged a quick glance before Rachel turned her seat to face her. Her smile, though forced and not quite reaching her eyes, said, "We're going to stay at a hotel near the airport tonight, sweetheart. Then tomorrow we'll be flying to our holiday destination." Emily's brow furrowed in confusion. "But where? And why didn't you tell me?" David spoke up, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "It's a surprise, Pumpkin. We want it to be extra special for you." Not satisfied with the vague answers, Emily's gaze swept over the mountain of luggage crammed into the car. "Why do we have so much stuff? How long are we staying?" Rachel's smile faltered for a moment as she replied, "Well, we want to be prepared for anything. You never know what you might need on a big trip like this." As Emily processed this, her eyes fell on something familiar wedged between two suitcases, her school bag, with some of her textbooks and study materials peeking out. "Mom," she said slowly, confusion evident in her voice. "Why did you pack my school stuff? We don't need that for a holiday, do we?" The car swerved slightly as David's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Rachel's forced cheerfulness gave way to irritation, and in a sharp tone, Emily snapped, "That's enough questions. We've told you it's a surprise. You need to be quiet now." Emily recoiled at her mother's tone, shrinking back into her seat as tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, a mixture of hurt and fear welling up inside her. This didn't feel like the start of an exciting holiday. Something was wrong, though she couldn't quite pinpoint it. The rest of the drive passed in intense silence. Finally, they pulled into the parking lot of a large hotel near the airport. The building loomed over them, its windows glowing warmly against the night sky, a sight that, under different circumstances, might have excited Emily about staying in such a grand place. Now, however, it felt intimidating. They checked in quickly, with David speaking in low, hurried tones to the receptionist, while Rachel kept a firm grip on Emily's hand as they made their way to their room. Laden with luggage, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that her parents were constantly looking over their shoulders, as if expecting someone to be following them. Once in the room, David began methodically unpacking certain items, while Rachel drew the curtains tightly shut. Emily sat on one of the beds, watching her parents' frantic activity with growing unease. "Why don't we go down to the lobby for a drink?" David suggested suddenly, his voice overly bright. "We could all use a little refreshment after that drive. How about an iced tea for you, Emily?" Rachel nodded a bit too enthusiastically. "That's a wonderful idea. What do you say, sweetheart?" Emily agreed hesitantly, hoping that in a public space her parents' might relax, and things could start feeling normal again. They made their way down to the lobby and found seats in the hotel bar. As they settled in with their drinks, a soda for David, a glass of wine for Rachel, and an iced tea for Emily, the young girl couldn't help but notice how her parents' eyes kept darting around the room as if searching for potential threats. Emily sipped her iced tea slowly. The sweet liquid did little to soothe the churning anxiety in her stomach. Just as she was about to ask another question, she noticed a man at a nearby table staring intently in their direction. His gaze was fixed on Rachel, and his expression grew darker by the second. Suddenly, he stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor, and approached their table with purposeful, angry steps. "You are disgusting," he spat, addressing Rachel directly. "People like you should not be allowed to have a child." Rachel froze, her face draining of color as she managed to stammer, "Excuse me." The man's voice rose, drawing the attention of other patrons. "You are not a mother," he continued, his words laced with venom. "This is disgusting. People like you having children should be a crime." Emily shrank back in her chair, overwhelmed by fear and confusion. She couldn't understand why the stranger was so angry at her mother. Before the situation could escalate further, a hotel staff member intervened quickly, escorting the agitated man away. The lobby buzzed with whispers and furious stares directed at their table. Rachel abruptly stood up, her hands shaking as she gathered her belongings. "This has been too much," she said in a trembling voice. "We should go back to our room." As they hurried back to the elevator, Emily's mind reeled. What did that man mean? Why was he so upset with her mother? The fear and confusion that had built up all evening crystallized into a hard knot in her stomach. Once back in their room, unable to contain herself any longer, Emily asked in a small, scared voice, "Mom, what did that man mean? Why was he so angry at you?" Rachel's face turned pale, and her movements became jerky as she busied herself with unpacking. "He was just drunk, sweetheart," she said, not meeting Emily's eyes. Some people say silly things when they've had too much to drink. But Emily could tell that wasn't the whole truth. The man hadn't seemed merely drunk, but angry, and the trembling in her mother's hands and the averted gaze suggested there was more to the story than she was being told. The tension in the hotel room was palpable as Emily sat on the edge of the bed, her small frame dwarfed by the thick comforter, while her parents moved about the room with frantic, disjointed energy, a stark contrast to their usual composed demeanor. Then, Rachel's voice cut through the silence. "It's time for you to go to sleep. We have to get up early tomorrow to catch our flight." Emily wanted to protest and demand answers to the myriad questions swirling in her mind, but the stern look on her mother's face made her hesitate. Reluctantly, she nodded silently and climbed under the covers, still fully dressed. Rachel approached the bed and leaned down to place a kiss on Emily's forehead. What was once a comforting gesture now felt strangely hollow. "Your father and I are going to go down to the hotel lobby for another drink," Rachel said in a strained voice, "and we'll be back soon, but you should try to sleep, okay?" Emily nodded again, watching as her parents exited the room with the door clicking shut behind them. The silence that followed was deafening. Despite her mother's instructions, sleep was the furthest thing from Emily's mind. She lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, as the events of the day, hurried packing, the angry man in the lobby, and the mysterious phone calls, all played on repeat in her head. The more she thought about it, the more confused and scared she became. It was difficult to gauge how much time had passed when a shrill ringing suddenly cut through the silence. Emily sat up, startled, and realized the sound was coming from a phone on the bedside table, a phone her mother must have forgotten in their rush to leave. Emily hesitated, unsure of what to do. She had been taught not to answer other people's phones. But what if it was important? What if it was about their surprise trip? The phone continued to ring insistently, and finally, Emily reached out and picked it up. The caller ID displayed a name she recognized: Sophia, Lily's mother. For a moment, Emily said nothing, her throat tight with uncertainty. Before she could decide whether to speak, Sophia's voice came through the line, urgent and worried. "Rachel, tell me the truth. What is going on here? I've tried to contact you dozens of times now. Tell me the truth. Is this boy?" Emily's heart raced at the strange question, and after swallowing hard, she finally found her voice. "Sorry, I'm not Mom. It's Emily. Mom is in the hotel lobby." Sophia's gasp was audible through the phone. "Oh, I'm so glad you're okay." Her voice softened, gentle yet urgent. "Emily, please tell me. Did your parents tell you where you were going?" Confused by the question and the tone of Sophia's voice, Emily replied hesitantly, "No, it's a surprise, but I think we're going somewhere special. We have so much luggage, and we even brought my school stuff. I think we're going on a long holiday trip." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Oh no, I knew it." Sophia muttered more to herself than to Emily. Then her voice became even more focused and intense. "Emily, listen to me. You have to tell me where you are right now." "What?" Emily, growing more confused by the second, listened as Sophia's voice turned urgent, almost pleading. "You just have to trust me right now. Do you remember that newspaper you showed me earlier? There is something very wrong with this, and it has to do with you. Please, you just have to trust me now." Emily's mind was reeling. She didn't understand what was happening, but something in Sophia's urgency and concern made her want to comply. "We're at a hotel near the airport," she said slowly. "I think I saw the name Skyra stay. I'm not sure." "Okay, good," Sophia said, her voice tight with relief. "I want you to stay on the line with me. I'm going to call for help. Whatever you do, don't tell your parents about this call, okay?" Before Emily could respond, she heard the sound of the hotel room door opening. Her parents' voices drifted in from the entryway, and in a moment of panic, she heard someone say, Mom and Dad are back, in a hurried whisper into the phone. Suddenly, Emily's eyes widened in fear as she looked up and saw her mother, Rachel, rushing toward her. In one swift motion, Rachel snatched the phone from Emily's grasp. Glancing at the screen, her expression changed from shock to anger. Without a word, she ended the call and threw the phone to the ground with such force that it shattered into pieces. The room fell into a tense silence, broken only by the sound of Rachel's heavy breathing and the crunch of glass underfoot. Frozen on the bed, tears welling in her eyes, Emily had never seen her mother so angry and frightened. "Mom," she whimpered, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to," but Rachel wasn't listening. Instead, she turned to David, who stood in the doorway with a mask of shock and fear. "We have to go," Rachel said in a trembling voice. "We don't have time to pack everything. Just grab what we need." David nodded, springing into action as he began throwing essential items into a single suitcase, while Rachel paced the room, muttering under her breath. Emily sat on the bed in stunned silence, watching her parents move around with frantic energy. She wanted to ask what was happening, why they were leaving so suddenly, but the words stuck in her throat. Finally, David zipped up the suitcase and turned to Emily, saying in a strained but false cheerful tone, "Come on, sweetheart. We're going on an adventure." As they rushed out of the hotel room, leaving behind most of their belongings, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't an adventure at all. It felt more like running away, though she could not understand from what or why. The questions swirled in her mind as they made their way down to the lobby. Clasping her small hand tightly in her father's, Emily realized that whatever was happening, whatever secrets her parents were keeping, nothing would ever be the same again. The hotel lobby was eerily quiet as the family hurried through it, their footsteps echoing off the polished marble floors. Outside, the cool night air hit Emily's face, making her shiver. Her father still gripped her hand tightly as he raised his other arm to hail a taxi. They waited until a yellow taxi pulled up to the curb, and David quickly ushered Emily into the back seat. Following close behind, Rachel slid in with more force than necessary. "Airport, please," David said to the driver, his voice strained and hurried as the taxi pulled away. Emily pressed her face against the window, watching the hotel recede into the distance. Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion and fear. She wanted to ask questions and demand explanations, but the tense atmosphere in the car left her silent. Only a few minutes into the ride did the first police siren pierce the night air. Emily felt her mother stiffen beside her, and she saw her father's knuckles turn white as he gripped the seat in front of him. "Can't you go any faster?" Rachel hissed at the driver in a voice tight with panic. The driver, sensing the urgency, pressed down on the accelerator, but it was too late. More sirens joined the first, growing louder by the second. In the rearview mirror, Emily could see the flashing lights of multiple police cars gaining on them rapidly. Suddenly, the taxi screeched to a halt, blocked by 3 police cars that had pulled up in front, effectively cutting off their escape. "Get out of the car now!" a booming voice commanded through a megaphone, startling Emily. For a moment, her parents exchanged looks of desperation, and Emily thought they might try to run. Then, with a defeated sigh, David opened the car door and murmured, "It's over," more to himself than to anyone else. As they stepped out of the taxi, Emily was blinded by the bright spotlights of the police cars. She could barely make out the silhouettes of several officers with their weapons drawn and pointed in their direction. "Get on your knees, hands where we can see them." The command rang out harshly and unyieldingly. Emily watched in horror as her parents slowly sank to their knees on the cold pavement, their hands raised above their heads. Unable to process what was happening, Emily, too, lowered herself to the ground. The rough asphalt scraped her knees through her jeans, and she could hear her mother sobbing nearby, while her father's ragged breathing filled the air. Officers swarmed around, quickly handcuffing her parents. Paralyzed with fear, Emily watched as they were roughly pulled to their feet and led towards separate police cars. "Mom, Dad," she finally cried out, her voice breaking as she watched her parents being taken away. An officer approached her, his face a mix of concern and determination, and knelt beside her. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe now. We're here to help you." Yet Emily could not understand how taking her parents away could be a good thing. She tried to stand and run toward them, but gentle hands held her back. A familiar voice then cut through the chaos. Emily turned to see Sophia, Lily's mother, pushing her way through the crowd of officers. Her face was a mask of worry and relief as she exclaimed, "Oh, thank God. I was so worried, but you're safe now, sweetheart. You're safe." Emily clung to Sophia, her small body shaking with sobs as she looked on in disbelief. She could see her parents being placed into separate police cars, her mother's face streaked with tears and her father's expression unreadable as he stared straight ahead. "What's happening?" Emily managed to choke out between sobs. "Why are they taking my parents away?" Sophia pulled back slightly, placing her hands on Emily's shoulders, and opened her mouth as if to explain, then closed it again, seemingly at a loss for words. An officer approached them with a grave expression. "We need to take you to the station," he said to Sophia. "There's a lot we need to sort out." Sophia nodded and then turned back to Emily. "We're going to go with a nice officer, okay? I promise I'll be with you the whole time." As Sophia guided Emily toward one of the police cars, Emily couldn't help but look back at the receding figures of her parents. The flashing lights of the police cars cast an eerie glow over the scene, making it feel like some terrible nightmare, even though Emily knew this was all too real. When the police car door closed behind her, she realized that her life had just changed forever. The questions that had been building all day now loomed larger than ever, demanding answers she wasn't sure she was ready to hear. At the police station, the activity was a whirlwind. Emily was led inside, her small hand tightly clasped in Sophia's, under the harsh glow of fluorescent lights that made everything seem stark and unfamiliar. A far cry from the warm, comforting world she had known just hours earlier. Officers bustled about, their voices a low murmur of urgency and purpose. Overwhelmed, Emily looked up at Sophia, silently seeking reassurance that this was all a misunderstanding and that everything would soon return to normal. Sophia's voice quivered as she asked softly, "What's going on here? Why did they take your parents away?" Kneeling down to Emily's level, Sophia spoke gently. "Oh, Emily, I don't know how to explain this to you. It's very complicated." Emily's frustration and fear mingled as she pleaded, "Please, I need to know. What did my parents do wrong?" Sophia took a deep breath and, with eyes searching Emily's face, asked, "Do you remember the newspaper you showed me earlier, the one with the missing boy on the front page?" Emily nodded slowly, unsure of where this was going. "Well," Sophia continued carefully, "that boy, Samuel, is you." The words hung heavy in the air. Emily shook her head, unable to process what she had just heard. "What do you mean? I'm not a boy. I'm a girl. I'm Emily Green." Before Sophia could respond further, an officer with a kind but serious face approached and said, "We need to take your statement now, and we have some questions to ask. Would you like to come with us?" Sophia nodded, standing up and taking Emily's hand once more. "Of course, I'm not leaving your side," she promised. They were led to a small, welcoming room with a table and chairs, far from the harsh interrogation rooms one might expect, as the room was decorated with cheerful posters and even had a small collection of toys in one corner, clearly designed to be non-threatening for children. Inside, a woman in a smart suit introduced herself as Olivia Carter, a social worker assigned to Emily's case. Another man, dressed in plain clothes with a badge clipped to his belt, introduced himself as Detective Michael Thompson. "Hello, Emily," Detective Thompson said gently. "We know this must be very confusing and scary for you right now, but we're here to help. We just need to ask you a few questions and explain some things." Emily nodded mutely, her eyes wide and wary. The detective then pulled out a familiar newspaper and placed it on the table in front of her. The missing boy's face stared up at her, twisting something inside her as she looked at it. "Emily," Detective Thompson began in a careful, measured tone, "this boy in the picture, his name is Samuel. He went missing from an orphanage when he was 2 years old. Emily nodded slowly, still not understanding where the explanation was heading. The thing is, Emily, the detective continued, we have reason to believe that you are Samuel. He paused, glancing at Sophia, who nodded encouragingly, and then turned back to Emily in a gentle voice as he explained further. When you were at Lily's house earlier today, you showed Sophia that newspaper with the missing boy's picture. After you left, Sophia took another look at it and discussed it with her husband. They both agreed that the boy in the photo bore a striking resemblance to you, which raised some serious concerns. Sophia leaned in, her voice soft but clear. I tried to reach your mother to ask her about it, but she ignored me. Then, when you answered the phone at the hotel and told me about all the luggage, sweetie, I realized your parents must have become frightened because of the person ads. It seemed they were trying to flee with you. The words hit Emily like a physical blow. She shook her head vehemently, tears springing to her eyes as she protested. No, that's not true. I'm not a boy. I'm a girl. I'm Emily Green. Olivia, the social worker, leaned forward in a soft, reassuring voice. Sweetheart, we understand that this is very difficult to hear. It's important for you to know that how you feel inside, whether you feel like a girl or a boy, is entirely up to you. We're not here to tell you who you should be. We're just trying to understand what happened to you. Emily's mind reeled as she searched their faces for any sign that this was all a mistake, but all she saw was genuine sympathy and concern. But my parents, they've always been my parents. How could I be someone else? Detective Thompson's face grew serious as he said, Emily, we believe that the people you have known as your parents are not your biological parents. We think they may have taken you from the orphanage when you were very young. The room seemed to spin as Emily felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet, leaving her floating in a sea of confusion and disbelief. No, she whispered shakily. That can't be true. They love me. They wouldn't, they couldn't. Sophia reached out and placed a comforting hand on Emily's arm. I know this is hard to believe, sweetheart, but there are things your parents did that weren't right, things that have made us very concerned about your safety and well-being. Tears streamed down Emily's face as she pleaded. What things? What did they do? The adults exchanged glances, silently deciding how much to reveal. The small room in the police station seemed to close in on Emily, its cheerful posters now looming ominously, and the air felt thick. Emily sat in her chair, her small frame hunched over, wrapping her arms around herself as if trying to hold herself together. Detective Thompson cleared his throat softly and continued, I know this is overwhelming, but we need to ask you a few more questions, if that's okay. Emily nodded mutely, her eyes wide and wary. Can you tell us about your life with the Greens? The detective asked gently. Did they ever do anything that made you uncomfortable or scared you? Emily furrowed her brow as she thought back over her life. Despite the shock of recent revelations, she couldn't recall any moments of fear or discomfort with her parents. No, she said quietly. They were always kind to me. They loved me. The adults exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of concern and skepticism. Olivia, the social worker, pressed gently. They never hurt you, did they? They never made you do anything you didn't want to do. Emily shook her head emphatically. No, never. Only today they were different, angry and scared. But before today, they were always good to me. Detective Thompson leaned forward, his face serious. Emily, this is very important. We need to know if your parents ever told you that you were a boy, or if they ever mentioned that you were different from other girls. Emily's mind raced as she tried to recall, but all she remembered was a life where she had always been Emily, always been a girl. No, she said softly but firmly. They never said anything like that. I've always been a girl. I'm a girl. Emily opened her mouth to say more, but before she could speak, the door burst open and another officer rushed in. His face was flushed with excitement, and in his hand he held a small orange pill bottle. We found this in your mother's purse, he announced, placing the bottle on the table. Sophia leaned forward, her eyes widening in recognition. Those are the pills I've seen your mother, Rachel, taking, she said. She told me they were her hormone pills, part of her transition. Emily felt a surge of frustration and insisted in a rising voice. No, those are my asthma pills. I have to take them every day, or I might have trouble breathing. Mom always makes sure I take them on time." The new officer picked up the bottle and examined the label closely. "These aren't asthma medication," he said gravely. "These are high-dose estrogen pills. They're used for hormone therapy in transgender adults. A child should definitely not be taking these." The room fell silent as the implications of this discovery sank in. Emily felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her. She looked from face to face, searching for some sign that this was all a mistake, but all she saw was growing concern and alarm. Sophia broke the tense silence, her voice trembling slightly. "Oh my, I knew about your mother, Rachel. It was never really a secret in our community that she is transgender. I knew she took hormone pills for her transition, but I never, not in my wildest dreams, would have thought she was giving those pills to you too. This is unthinkable." Detective Thompson leaned forward, his expression grave as he said, "I think we need to get you to a hospital right away. We don't know what effects these pills might have had on your body. You need to be examined by a doctor as soon as possible." Olivia nodded in agreement. "I'll make the arrangements," she said, standing up and moving toward the door. Emily felt panic rising in her chest and protested. "No, I don't want to go to the hospital. I want to go home. I want my parents." Sophia moved to Emily's side, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "I know this is scary, sweetheart, but we need to make sure you're okay. The doctors just want to help you." As the adults bustled around, making phone calls and arrangements, Emily felt as if she were watching everything from a great distance. The world she had known, the life she had lived, was crumbling around her. As they prepared to take her to the hospital, she couldn't shake the feeling that with each passing moment, she was moving further away from everything she had ever known and loved. The police car cut through the night, its siren silent, but its lights casting intermittent blue flashes across the darkened streets as they made their way to the hospital. Across town, Emily sat in the back seat, sandwiched between Sophia and Olivia, while Detective Thompson sat in the front passenger seat, occasionally glancing back at her with a mixture of concern and sympathy. The city passed by in a blur outside the windows, but Emily barely noticed, her mind still a whirlwind of confusion, fear, and disbelief. Each recollection brought a fresh wave of pain and uncertainty. Finally, in a soft voice barely audible over the hum of the car's engine, Emily asked, "What's going to happen to my parents?" Sophia exchanged a glance with Olivia before answering gently but firmly, "Emily, what your parents did was very wrong. They broke the law, and they'll have to face the consequences. They'll probably have to go to prison." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes again. Despite everything she had learned, despite the betrayal and the lies, she couldn't shake the love she felt for the people who had raised her. "But they're not bad people," she protested weakly. "They love me. They've always taken care of me." Sophia pulled Emily closer, her arm a comforting weight around the girl's shoulders, and said softly, "I know this is hard to understand, sweetheart. Love is complicated, and sometimes the people who love us can still do things that are wrong. Your parents made some very bad choices, even if they thought they were doing it out of love." Emily nodded slowly, trying to process this, but new fears suddenly gripped her as she looked up at Sophia with wide, frightened eyes. "What's going to happen to me now? Where will I go if they go to prison?" The question hung heavy in the air of the police car. Sophia felt tears forming in her own eyes as she saw the fear and vulnerability on Emily's face. Pulling the girl into a tight hug, she said, "I want you to listen very carefully, Emily. You are not alone. You have your best friend, Lily. You have me, and there are many other people who care about you and want to help. I know this must be incredibly hard for you, but you have to know that you are very strong and brave for enduring all of this." Emily buried her face in Sophia's shoulder, her small body shaking with sobs as she whispered, "I'm scared. I don't know who I am anymore." Gently stroking Emily's hair, Sophia reassured her, "You are you. No matter what name you have or what your past is, you are still the same person inside, and we're going to help you figure this all out. I promise." The car then fell silent except for Emily's quiet sniffles as they drove through the night toward the hospital. As they neared the hospital, the building's windows glowed like beacons in the dark. Sophia, filled with both hope and apprehension, silently vowed that whatever came next, she would be there for Emily through this difficult time. She believed that one day Emily would understand the truth behind everything that had happened and would have the strength and support to decide for herself whether she wanted to live as Samuel or continue as Emily Green. In the hospital, challenges awaited: medical examinations, psychological evaluations, legal proceedings, and countless other obstacles. But as Sophia looked down at Emily, curled up against her side with determination in her eyes despite the tears, she promised to face whatever came next together. And though Emily's world had been shattered in that long, harrowing night, the love and strength that had always been a part of her would, in time, help her find a new way forward.